This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
All right, so we're going to press record.
And here we go!
This is what you can look forward to on episode 170 of Skywalking Through Neverland.
Right? That they're celebrating Richard and Sarah 40 years together?
No.
Oh.
No, Steve. We're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Star Wars.
One of my earliest memories of Star Wars might actually be from the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Luke's father is Darth Vader.
This is Gary Kurtz, the producer of Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. I'm celebrating the 40th anniversary of the original Star Wars on Skywalking Through Neverland.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Hello, Skywalkers.
Hey, listen. Neverland.
I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
Wow. Oh, what?
You are skywalking through Neverland.
Hey there, Skywalkers, and of course, Richard and Sarah. This is Alan R. Ryan of Ozfans Radio Network, enjoying the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. I look back to the original, and the first time I ever saw it was on network television. I remember the trash compactor scene in particular being the one that really got me into loving these heroes that worked together to try and get out of each dilemma as they went along on their adventure. And in this case, it was actually the droid that saved them. It's amazing, isn't it? That this is now 40 years we have enjoyed this saga. It's amazing. This is Alan R. Ryan, and may the Force be with you.
Hey, Skywalkers! Are you ready to travel back to the time when you first saw Star Wars, whether it was 1977 or 2017? Well, this is the episode that has been 40 years in the making. So without further ado, and if you are ready, then we want to welcome you all to Skywalking Through Neverland. This is the podcast where you will find the bright and positive center of your Star Wars and Disney fandom. I am Richard Woloski, and now everyone please say hello to my sweetie wife Sarah, who is my smuggler's bounty.
Well, thank you. I'm just the package that keeps on giving.
And giving, but only I want to open. That doesn't sound right at all. So you are mint on card, okay?
Okay, I like it. Well, I want to give a big, warm welcome and Wookiee hug to our Star Wars and Disney family. It's our family of Skywalkers. And you know what? We want to say hello especially to our Scope Walkers who are watching on Periscope and our Face Huggers who are watching on Facebook. And yay! And a special hello to those of you listening on YouTube right now. So if you're near your computer or phone, just click on that little subscribe button right down there. And also, you'll be notified when a new video is posted. And we'll be posting one at least every week, and most likely 2 or 3 a week. So, yay! From Star Wars Land construction updates to full press conferences we attend at Walt Disney Studios.
To unboxing videos.
Yeah.
Those videos we said we would never do.
It's true.
End up doing one a week now.
Yeah. And also, so thank you, Skywalker, so much for doing that. We also love it when you tweet at us during the show. We are at Skywalking Pod. And also, I just want to give a big thank you to all of our Skywalkers. You guys really listened last week, because last week is when we started asking you to subscribe on YouTube, and we got over 50 new subscribers in the past week. So we want to thank you so much. It's just awesome to see that kind of response.
Now this week, let's get 51.
Ooh, 51 new.
Yes,
I like
51 new YouTube subscribers.
That's true.
A challenge is on. Will you Skywalkers accept? The ones who have not already subscribed. All right, now we are recording this from Long Beach, California on May the 23rd, 2017, the Star Wars release Eve. That's May 23rd, Star Wars release Eve to the big holiday.
I
Got
like it.
lots coming up in next week. that we'll be sharing with the Skywalkers next week. Lots of fun 40th anniversary activities. Cannot wait. So much happening here in Los Angeles. So if you Skywalkers want to join us, well, let us know. Look at our Facebook page. We don't have any events just yet posted, but we posted things. Brian Sims has posted things that we're going to be doing.
In our Facebook group?
In our Facebook group. That's what I meant. Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right. Now,
well, you know what?
I didn't ask you the time.
No, you didn't.
And I was trying to stall while you try to get Minnie Mouse prepped and ready.
Mm-hmm.
So, Sarah, what time is it?
It's 9:33. Good morning.
Oh, it's so early today.
Now, coming up on this week's show, we are celebrating the 40th anniversary of the release of Star Wars. Not Episode 4, not A New Hope, but as it was called back in 1977, Star Wars. And we will be joined by producer Gary Kurtz.
Woo-hoo.
This is very exciting since he doesn't do very many podcasts. And as far as we can confirm, this may be the first time he's been a guest on a Star Wars podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if anyone can prove us wrong, let us know. But we did a lot of digging, and so far, as far as we know, he's never been a guest on a Star Wars podcast. So once again, another Star Wars skywalking through Neverland first.
Yeah.
So excited.
Yeah, and I know that his audio has been heard on some other podcasts, but he wasn't a special guest for that particular podcast. So,
right, so that's the criteria. If he's been a guest on another Star Wars podcast, let us know so we can correct that, okay?
Yeah. All right, and also on this episode, we will be joined by you, the Skywalkers. So you have all responded and sent us in clips telling us your greatest memories from seeing Star Wars and what it has meant to you. Like this one from Richard, your good friend, Jimmy Pruey.
My memory from 77 would have to be wondering why there weren't toys to play with at Christmas time. All there was Micronauts and Zeroids, but I didn't care. Star Wars was in theaters, and Star Wars in theaters, that was the perfect playground anyone could ever hope for. So, happy 40th anniversary, Star Wars. This has been Jim Pruey, your East Coast correspondent.
I recall those days when there was no Star Wars toys on the shelves, but certain toy stores tried to pass off these Micronauts as Star Wars toys.
Huh.
It's like, are you kidding me? It clearly says Micronauts on the packaging.
Yeah.
The packaging I will leave closed because I want the Star Wars toys. All right, now, from the first days to the Last Jedi, Ric Peralta of LiningUp.net will be joining us to give us an update on lining up for The Last Jedi. Now, the film opens up on December the 15th, but I'm sure they're planning on getting the party started a few weeks earlier, like they did with The Force Awakens and Rogue One. Truly was a big Star Wars party down in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And hopefully The Last Jedi will be the last Star Wars film to be opened up in December, with Han Solo and Episode 9 both coming out in May of 2018-2019.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what change that will ring. And it's funny because Star Wars fans were all up in arms when they announced at first that The Force Awakens would be in December. And now I hear people going, oh no, we like our December release. So
no.
It's really funny.
No.
Well, I know not you, but a lot of people.
All right. Now, Matt Clifton on Facebook is asking, what theater is it at, Richard? This is a test, isn't it? All right, I can get this. The TCL Chinese Theater.
One more.
TCL.
No, you almost had it.
TCL.
You just needed to add something at the end.
TCL Chinese Theater IMAX.
Yes.
Thanks, Matt.
Oh, see, Chris Marino got it. And
see.
Patty, hi. Yay, Patty.
So, guys, listen because we want all the Skywalkers to join us in December.
Yay.
But it's a good fundraiser, too, for the Starlight Children's Foundation.
Absolutely.
So come and share and party, and please donate when you can.
Also on this episode, we will have shout-outs, Skywalker of the Week, the things we want to share, and a reminder about the Buried Treasure Contest, where we are giving away a grab bag full of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 goodies.
This is the buried treasure because we mentioned it on the last episode as we were wrapping up. and said that you had to do something in particular to win. Now, once again, we're going to bury the details as we're wrapping up this week's show, but that will be the last time you will be reminded. So, do you want this buried treasure full of Guardians of the Galaxy goodies? I bet you do. All you got to do is listen at the end of the show. That's all we're going to say. Now, before we share some things, Sarah, let's hear a few more Star Wars memories from our Skywalkers.
Hi, this is Adam Bray, co-author of Star Wars, the Visual Encyclopedia, and a whole bunch of other DK Star Wars and Marvel books. One of my earliest memories of Star Wars might actually be from the Star Wars Holiday Special. And it hadn't occurred to me before, but I might have actually seen that before I saw A New Hope. But yeah, I remember seeing bits and pieces of it on television, and years later it almost seemed like a dream. And like a lot of my friends and family didn't believe me. They didn't believe it was real. They thought I'd made it up because, that was back before the days of the internet where we could all talk about it. So it wasn't until I was an adult when I discovered, yes, there really was a holiday special and my memories were real. But whether I saw that first or A New Hope, I actually saw the movie in a drive-in movie theater. Would have been when I was about 3 or 4 years old, probably. And I just remember seeing R2-D2 get sucked up into the Jawa sandcrawler through the windshield of our family car, and hearing all the noises, the Utini! In the crackly speaker outside the car window. So it was really kind of an exciting way to see a Star Wars movie that probably not many people have done. But yeah, and then my first birthday that I remember, I actually got the Millennium Falcon and those original Star Wars action figures. So Star Wars has been with me from my earliest memories. So happy 40th anniversary, Star Wars.
Richard and Sarah, hey. My name is Lance Dobrasek, and was a Skywalker of the Week a little while back, so thank you very much for that. And my story is probably, I'm part of the original, the vintage generation, I guess. I was 6 years old in 1977, and I remember vividly seeing the movie in the theater, being dropped off. It was rainy. I live in Wisconsin, so it was probably a little cold, but it was still summer. But yeah, just so many scenes from the movie really made an impact. Everything from the, Luke's lightsaber, the droids, Cantina, and then the closing ceremony was really, really just what always walked out of the theater just so happy, and so made a huge impact. I'm a creative now, and that started back then. And kind of an interesting story. I saw George Lucas about 6 years ago or so on my birthday in the Art Institute of Chicago, and he had kind of a private moment, and I didn't want to bug him, but just so much want to just tell him, you know what, hey, it's because I'm here because of Star Wars. That path of kind of being a creative has never let up. So yeah, just a huge impact on me and my life path. And thanks for letting me share, and we'll talk to you guys later. All right.
Things we want to share. Things we want to share. Things we want to share.
So we asked our Skywalkers to share their Star Wars memories. Well, I figure it's a good time for us to share our memories for this Things We Want to Share.
And we may have a memory or two, or a million. Seeing how I was a vintage fan back in 1977 at the ripe old age of 8 years old. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I really want to share is not so much seeing the movie, but playing Star Wars with my friends like Jimmy Pruitt, who we just heard from. And Jimmy, you were right. There were no toys in the beginning. Nothing role-playing per se. Like later on, Kenner would come out with the Han Solo blaster or the Stormtrooper blaster. Even those knockoff lightsabers were few and far between. Those were those red-handled flashlights. And some companies had the bright idea of putting like a very thin tube at the end of the flashlight. So as soon as you hit something, it fell right apart.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember my friend Sean Doherty got the green lightsaber, and he was so mad because no one in Star Wars had a green lightsaber. If only we knew, we could have said, hey, you know what? In 6 more years, you're going to be ahead of your time because Luke will have a green lightsaber. But back then, Kenner, I don't know why, but they missed the boat on the whole lightsaber phenomenon. They did later on have those yellow inflatable lightsabers.
Why yellow?
Well, you know what? That was the question we had asked Steve Sansweet when he was on our show in the very beginning.
Right.
Because I asked him, why did Kenner make all these lightsabers yellow? Like Ben Kenobi's original lightsaber was yellow. Why? And he said that Kenner had gotten all these black and white stills, and Kenner just filled in the gap and thought, oh, okay, they could be yellow. We don't know. We don't have a phone around here we could call somebody, so we're just going to assume that they're yellow. Hence, all the lightsabers back then were yellow.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, odd.
That makes sense.
So Kenner didn't have any of these toys ready and available, but that didn't stop us. So my friends, every night, we would go out and play Star Wars. And those are some of my greatest memories of us running around the neighborhood. And we didn't really get the whole concept of private property. So we'd be running around our neighbors' yards, crawling up in their garages. One neighbor had this big like barn-like garage. We'd play in there. That would be our home base.
Aww.
We didn't really think about all these power tools that were all plugged in.
So this was a neighbor that wasn't the father of one of your friends or anything like that?
No, that had no concern to us. This is back in Newton, Massachusetts, when the sun was just setting.
Mm-hmm.
So it was dark enough where it's like, hey, this is pretty neat. We're outside playing. And my friends, they had their certain characters they wanted to be, but I always wanted to be a Jawa.
Really?
I love me some Jawas.
I thought you wanted to be Luke.
You know what? Darth Vader, I loved being Darth Vader, but I liked being a Jawa because think about it. It's at night, and what do you see on a Jawa at night? His little glowing eyes.
Okay.
So what I would do is I would get my winter coat, and I would bundle myself up, put the hood up, and I would stick 2 flashlights on the side of my head, and they would stay there because they'd be pressed up against the hood, and I'd turn the lights on, and instant Jawa.
Wow. That is super cool.
That's my cosplaying Jawa.
Aww.
And of course, as we're running around the neighborhood all playing tag and choosing teams, well, I wasn't very hard to find because I was the one with the glowing head. And we would run all over the neighborhood. We'd have to get sticks for lightsabers. And then before we knew it, the other kids in the neighborhood, the older kids, hence the bullies, they wanted to play too. But at that time, they wanted to play Star Wars, so it's like they'll put their bulliness aside, and they'll jump in and play. Well, how long do you think that lasted? Not long at all, because you know what? A bully's a bully, and all they're set for is destruction. And Jimmy Pruitt had got, I don't know where he got these, but have you ever seen these large wooden spools, maybe like 4 feet in diameter, and they would wrap telephone cables around them?
I've seen them.
Yeah, I'm sure if you saw a picture
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
What? He doesn't have phone lines. All his phone lines were buried, because he lives in a good neighborhood, all his phone lines were buried underneath. All right? So now these are like the big wheels. Big wheels with like a hub in the middle of it. So it'd be a good table. So if you look in most college dorms, you'll see these as being used as tables. Mm-hmm. Well, if you got 2 of them, they make the perfect TIE fighter wings.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah.
So there's 2 wings right there, and I had this little wooden playhouse, and we stuck that in the middle, and there was our instant TIE fighter. So once again, Kenner dropped the ball and didn't produce any Star Wars play sets that you could actually play on. That didn't happen until 1983, when finally they released this Scout Walker on these poles that was like maybe 15 feet high with a speeder bike swing. Did you ever see that?
What?
Yeah, it was a
swing?
Yeah, it was a swing, and it was like a Scout Walker base. It could climb up into the head of the Scout Walker, and down below was a swinging speeder bike.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, these were sold in 1983 when a lot of the Star Wars audience had grown up and grew out of things like this. So they didn't sell that many of them. which makes them that much more rare and valuable. I believe Steve Sansweet has got one. I really want to play on it too. So they didn't produce any of these play sets, so we had to make our own play sets. And we had this TIE Fighter, and once again, going back to the bully thing, they saw this and said, hey, there's a TIE Fighter. Let's destroy it. And I remember them just wrecking our wooden TIE Fighter. And like, dudes, we spent how many hours constructing this?
Yeah.
And then they just laughed and ran away. So aside from the destroying of our wooden TIE Fighter, that's one of my greatest memories of running around the neighborhood and playing where we weren't supposed to play in neighbors' yards and being Star Wars characters and really believing you were the characters and playing Into the Night was just so much fun.
Yeah.
That was, I would say, if I could go back in time, that's where I'd want to go back to and just watch my 8-year-old self with all my friends, Jimmy and Sean Doherty and Billy Mazzetti and Eric Barasano, and I'm sure there was many, many others, just running around and playing Star Wars.
Awesome.
Which is much different from today, where we run around conventions playing Star Wars. Some things never changed, and I'm very, very grateful.
Yes.
All right, Sarah, what are you grateful for? It's like Thanksgiving Skywalker style.
Grateful for, or what's my Star Wars memory?
Either or. I'm just trying to provide a segue.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go into my Star Wars memory, because that's what I was thinking about here. But before we do that, looks like Patty Hammond, she did not play with the toys, but listened to the storybooks with the audio cassette, where R2-D2 had us turn the page.
You will know it is time to turn the page when you hear R2-D2 beep, like this.
Aww.
Yeah. Another tangent, Jimmy Pruitt and I, we decided to do our own Star Wars on cassette back then. And we practiced and rehearsed all these voices and recorded our own Star Wars. I wish I had that recording. I wish
I bet.
Hey, Jimmy, if you're listening, do you still have that recording? I think we did this like back in 1979. All right, Jimmy, more homework for you, okay? Go and find that recording.
Yes.
All right, so Sarah, you were telling us about things you wanted to share.
Yes. So my Star Wars memory, I'm going to go back to the early days of when I first saw Star Wars, which of course was 91. And I was just starting middle school. So basically I remember in middle school was when... That's when I was into Star Wars, and I kind of got all my friends into Star Wars. And specifically, over the summertime, one of my friends, Chrissy, she lived about 10 minutes walking distance away. So we would spend many summer days actually walking to and from each other's houses and kind of just spending time doing things. And on this walk to and from each other's houses, it was a really pretty, we lived in a very hilly neighborhood, and there was this one tree called a mimosa tree that I just loved, and that was like the midway point between our houses. So we would always end up meeting like right there and then walking from one to the other houses. And I just remember, well, you know me, Star Wars for me was the love story, you know, so like the Empire Strikes Back, I know we're talking Star Wars here, but for me, I saw all three at once. So they all roll into one for me. And The Empire Strikes Back, the love scene, like Chrissy and I, as we were walking from each other's houses, we would like say the love scene over and over again to each other. So I like know those words so well because we would just say them. You know, you'd recite it like kids do. And I do remember, Richard, and I'm sorry, but we would fast forward the Yoda scenes.
Why?
Because they were the boring scenes.
You know what? I would have much rather have heard you swear than say what you just said. All right? You know what? Give us a Star Wars memory now.
That was my Star Wars memory.
All right. Well, give us what scene did you and Chrissy reenact from Star Wars?
Well, it was the love scene that I remember reenacting from Empire Strikes Back, unfortunately. So we did not rehearse lines from Star Wars. For me, Star Wars and all of those movies were all rolled into one. Mm-hmm. And so, well, I'll share one more memory with you.
That's how George Lucas looked at all the films as well, because someone once asked at the Star Wars Celebration 0, which is your favorite film? And he said, I see them all as one film. So you know what? That story was perfect for the 40th anniversary.
Okay.
There you go.
Can I share one
please.
more? Okay.
Please.
This has to do with music. In middle school, high school, we had band camp. And yes, I know, it's band camp. But I loved going to band camp. Me and my friends every year at school would look forward to the summer when we could have this week-long band camp at UT, Austin. And you'd play your instrument all day long. And then in the afternoons, you'd have these free times where you could either go to this big giant pool, you could stay in the dorm rooms, you could go to downtown Austin and shop. Well, one of these days I went to downtown Austin and shopped with my friends. And I remember there was a Gap store. I bought a t-shirt there. And then there was this Tower Records right next to it. And this was middle school as well. I believe I was in 7th grade. And we went to this Tower Records, and I remember finding out that there was an entire section of just movie soundtracks. And I was floored. I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And I had a little bit of, money that I had been saving, and I found the Empire Strikes Back soundtrack, the green with the Hoth Tauntaun on the cover. And I bought it. It was my first ever soundtrack that I ever bought with my own money. I was very proud of myself, and I love that thing.
That was a great soundtrack with great artwork on it.
Yeah, it was really neat. So that's my Star Wars memory. And I know once again, it's for Empire Strikes Back, but
you know what? We'll give it a pass because like Lucas, all the films are one with the story.
Yay.
So there you go.
Oh, it was not a cassette. It was a CD.
See,
because this was like 92, 93. Yeah.
All right. I'll go back and say that mine, when I got, was an actual record.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, I still have mine sealed because I already had the original soundtrack release.
Wow.
The one with the Vader head teaser poster on it.
Oh my
so
gosh.
I didn't need to open up this other one. So I think I've got to go dig that out and not open it.
Yeah. In fact, I think my soundtrack, that exact CD is by the Bunnies. So I would disturb the bunnies if I tried to go get it.
All right, you know what? Can't disturb the bunnies right now. They're napping. So next week you'll get yours.
Okay.
And I'll get my soundtrack.
Oh,
and we'll show all the Skywalkers because I love that artwork. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's neat.
All right, now let's hear from some more Skywalkers who have some Star Wars memories to share. And this next moment comes from Martin Keeler, who was on the episode number 168 a few weeks ago. He told this story on that episode. However, I thought, this is a good story to tell on the 40th anniversary. So I lifted it from that recording. And now here is Martin Keeler.
In the UK, we didn't get Star Wars in May. Got it in December. And a very quick version of the story. I was with Mark Newbold, who's a good friend of yours, about 2 weeks ago. And we were talking about the fact that Star Wars premiered in London in a theatre called the Dominion. And it played, I think it was the 27th, just after Christmas. And I can remember, because I was 4 or 5 at the time, and between Christmas and the New Year, my parents would take me and my sister to London to shop for the money that we'd got for Christmas. And my sister got a pair of roller skates, and I can remember it was on the same road as the Dominion, where Star Wars was showing. And there was a line to get in, and my dad said, why don't we join the line? And we went in and we saw it. And I didn't think anything more of that other than it was great. I saw Star Wars and I got interested in all the things that happened. But it was only talking to Mark a week ago that I realised I must have seen it within 48 hours of it coming out. And I think Mark was saying that makes me the first person he knows in the UK who saw it.
All right, now let's roll into our discussion with legendary producer Gary Kurtz. Now, we want to give a huge thank you to our friend and guest on a few Skywalking Through Neverland episodes, Craig Miller, who made the introduction between us and Mr. Kurtz.
20th Century Fox and George Lucas bring you an adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars. The story of a boy, a girl, and a universe.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
It's a spectacle, light years ahead of its time. It's an epic of heroes and villains and aliens from 1,000 worlds. Star Wars, 1 billion years in the making. The Force will be with you, always.
A long time ago, our next guest joined forces with George Lucas to bring the world a small space movie that would go on to change the lives of many generations to come.
And now, Skywalking Through Neverland is honored to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Star Wars with the man that produced some of the most influential films of all time, including American Graffiti, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, The Dark Crystal, and was a huge inspiration to me in film school. Here is Mr. Gary Kurtz.
Hey, Mr. Kurtz.
Hello, how are you?
We are doing just fine, thanks. And I've got to say, I've been waiting 40 years to meet the man that produced Star Wars. So we really appreciate you joining us. And there's so much we want to talk to you about. But first, got to ask you this. Do you call Episode 4 Star Wars or A New Hope?
Well, it wasn't A New Hope when we made it. We only wanted to make one film at the time, and the decision to do the series presented itself when Fox saw that the Star Wars was popular and asked us to see if we could do another one, and we said we'd have to do 2 more so that we have an economy of scale on building sets and things to get it done properly. So that's kind of how it happened. There was never any intent at the beginning to make more than just one film.
I want to go way back even before Star Wars, when you worked as a documentary filmmaker in the Marine Corps and went into combat with only a camera and survived. Can you tell us about that time period?
I'm not sure, actually. I don't really like to talk about that period. It wasn't pleasant for me. So I tend to just say that I did that, and I'm glad I got out, but I don't really want to elaborate on it.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
All right, then let's talk about this. You went from producing American Graffiti to Star Wars. When George Lucas brought this idea to you, what did you think?
Well, we were talking about a Flash Gordon-like space opera project while we were making American Graffiti, and George was writing on notes and things, and then he did a draft after we finished shooting American Graffiti, and it was always going to be an upbeat space opera type science fiction, more like Forbidden Planet than 2001. But that was the kind of thing we needed, because in the 1970s, science fiction was all pretty depressing stuff, because it was all about post-apocalyptic or post-atomic bomb stuff. And we thought that the audience out there might like a more positive aspect of a science fiction genre.
So you thought the audience would like a more positive aspect of the science fiction genre?
Yes. Since most of the films were not very good, are not very positive at that time, science fiction films. And we all loved the Flash Gordon serials from the 1930s, and as some of the science fiction films from the 50s that were more positive.
And having read some of the first drafts of Star Wars, they were really, really weighty. At what point did it start to evolve into something as light and fun as the Flash Gordon films?
Well, I think when we started to think that a story similar to The Hidden Fortress was a good role model, because it was, although it was a good solid action adventure, it had quite a few humorous moments, and that kind of balance that Kurosawa got so well, we hadn't seen in much science fiction, and thought it was a really good template to work on.
Okay.
Do you recall those first times when George brought this idea to you? Was it on the set of American Graffiti, and between takes he would say, "Hey, you know what? I got an idea I want to float by you."
No, it wasn't quite that simple, but we did discuss about our likes of science fiction and space opera type science fiction, and when he first started, he started with writing down names. He loved to keep these records of names, interesting names that that eventually found their way into the Star Wars story. And so there was a big list of names, pages and pages of names of people and planets and vehicles, other things that some of which showed up in the finished film, but a lot didn't. And it was just a starting point. And then the original outline for the first Star Wars, we all agreed was a bit convoluted and much too complicated. And actually, because it was a low-budget film, I think people, after all this time, forget the fact that it was one of the lowest-budget films that Fox was making that year, so it wasn't very high on their radar in terms of how it might perform at the box office, and we were doing it almost on a shoestring, so we were struggling a bit to cut things out of the script that we knew we couldn't possibly achieve.
Do you remember any of these names that George Lucas was writing down? Like, did any pop out to you that you remember after all these years?
That didn't get used?
Oh, that didn't get used. Well, a lot of the ones that didn't get used ended up being in the prequels that George did. And then there were a lot more that I can't really remember that clearly that didn't get used at all. But some of them were just unbelievably esoteric. Actually, at one time we were thinking about the idea of what if we made this film as in a language, made it all in Japanese and with subtitles. Would that make any difference to the dramatic impact? But of course, nobody liked that idea really, because first of all, at that time, subtitled films were only popular with a very small niche audience in America, and the studio would never have agreed for that at all.
I don't know if you've kept up or have seen any part of the animated Star Wars series like the Clone Wars or Rebels, or even with the new films, they've started to use a lot of ideas that George had discarded in the beginning, especially the Kyber crystals.
Ooh.
Yes. I think that's great, because there were a lot of things that absolutely couldn't do at the time, because there was no CGI. Everything had to be real or painted. It was quite complicated. Now a lot of things can be created with CGI that in a few days that took us months to do first film. So that now it can be done so simply that a lot of the ideas that were completely discarded originally can be done now and have been done quite successfully.
Oh, great. Yeah, and in all honesty, it seems like the Force was a very hard concept to boil down and translate onto film. So how did you and George go about simplifying that so it could be understood, especially by kids?
Well, we studied a lot of writings, introduction to comparative religion, and tried to come up with a concept that sounded like it was quite old. You know, a lot of the things that are normal in our lives, even philosophical concepts, are only normal because they've been around for so long. And we wanted the talk about the Force to seem like that. So it had to be quite simple in the way Ben explains it originally, and also the term "May the Force be with you" is lifted really from medieval Christianity, where "May God go with you" was the standard phrase that travelers said to each other. So we didn't want it to be too different from what was perceived as normal, and yet different enough that it seemed a bit strange, but comfortable and familiar enough that people didn't spend any time thinking about it.
Right.
Well, I think you guys did a great job with that, because I know, being raised Catholic, whenever I'd hear "May the Force be with you," I would say, "and also with you," and it was just like a total reflex thing, and you could always tell who was Catholic by who would do that when you said "May the Force be with you."
And as the producer, did Fox ever come to you and say, "Hey, we've got to really tone down the religious aspects of this because we really want it to be kid-friendly, and dealing with religion could be kind of dicey"? Did they ever come to you with that?
No, that never came up. It was never a problem.
Well, that's good. Wow.
I guess being all the way in England, they just left you guys alone and just do whatever you want to do. We'll release the film and then move on with our lives. Little did they know.
Pretty much. That as I said, it wasn't very prominent on their radar because of the fact that it was a low-budget film, and Laddie felt that Fox was taking a risk, and he thought it could be popular enough with a science fiction audience, and that's kind of how we sold it to them. That all it had to do was appeal to the hardcore science fiction audience, and it would make enough money to get the money back for the studio.
Did Alan Ladd Jr. ever intervene and just try to play it on both sides? I know he was a huge supporter of Star Wars, but was he trying to watch out for the studio as well? What was his position in all this?
Well, he was a big supporter of the project, and so he was on our side most of the time, although he did have some people at the studio that were skeptical about it. So he was an intermediary there, and we were never really at the studio. We never had much contact with anybody else. Once they gave us the green light, then he was the principal person from the studio, except for the head of physical production, who had some questions sometimes about how we were handling certain things, like ILM. But other than that, we were pretty much left alone because it wasn't such a high budget film that they needed to worry about it.
Between that and why isn't Chewbacca wearing pants?
That didn't ever come up either.
Oh,
wow!
That's a big misconception then. And speaking of which, what is the biggest misconception about the making of Star Wars?
I don't know. It's hard to say. It's probably about the fact that the studio didn't have any confidence in the film, and that's why they released it in such a weird way. But actually, the fact that it only opened in 40 cinemas was partially down to the fact that some of the exhibitors didn't like science fiction, and they didn't think that their audience would like science fiction. But the main reason was the fact that we were introducing a Dolby stereo sound, and it required special equipment in the cinema. There wasn't a lot of that. The exhibitors didn't want to pay to install the equipment. So in the end, Fox agreed to pay for the special Dolby sound equipment, and the cinemas agreed that if it had a successful run, they would pay Fox back and keep the equipment. So that gave us a few cinemas that could run Dolby stereo, and but when the film proved to be very popular from the very beginning, they expanded it into more and more cinemas every 2 or 3 weeks, until it was in maybe 1,000 cinemas at a time. Now, no film is released that way anymore. The current way of distribution is that popular films are released on up to 5,000 screens all at once, and everybody goes to see them right away. Now, in the 70s and 80s, that was not the case. It's all films were platformed to a certain extent, where they expanded it out into the marketplace. So it didn't matter whether you had The Sting or Sound of Music or whatever it was. They were platformed, and you didn't have thousands and thousands of screens. So, but now even Avatar, the highest grossing film of all time, was only in the cinemas for 8 to 10 weeks, and then it was gone, and something else came because it was in so many screens that everybody who needed to see it saw it in that time. So, in Star Wars case, it was in some cinemas for almost a year, And other films of that period in the 70s had the same thing happen. They were in the cinema for months. It just was an entirely different distribution pattern.
Right, yeah, and of course you have video, not video cassettes anymore, but you have rentals and everything now.
You have Blu-ray, you have iTunes, you have Netflix.
So it's like the landscape has totally changed.
Yes, there was no secondary market then. So theatrical films were re-released. Star Wars was re-released 3 years after the original release, in conjunction with Empire and Jedi, and that was a common pattern of the 70s and 80s too, because there was no other way for people to see the films.
Yeah.
I recall every time Star Wars was being re-released, I would have to go to the movies every single night because I thought, this is my last chance to see this. I'll never get a chance to see this again if I don't maximize my time right now, and thus that's why I missed most of grammar school.
And I know as a kid, I think it was one of Snow White was re-released in theaters, but as a kid, as a 5-year-old, I was like, wow, this is a new movie. Snow White was released for me, so you don't have any concept as a kid.
Right.
No.
Do you recall seeing Star Wars for the first time with a paying audience and just going, wow, they're really accepting this?
Yes, that we had a preview actually in early May of 77 in San Francisco on a Sunday morning. That was an invited audience, but I had my office make sure that the people who were invited were a good cross-section demographic. So we had kids as young as 3 and 4, and we had older people up to 70, 80, 90 even, and everybody in between, so that we could see the reaction of the audience. And a certain number of Fox executives were there, and that screening went quite well. The audience wasn't ecstatic about it. They weren't a science fiction audience. They were just ordinary people. So, but the audience was quite positive. The studio wanted preview cards, so we handed out preview cards and collated them afterwards. But the information that came back was pretty much as we thought, just watching the audience during the screening, who had it framed on the wall. He filled out the preview card with a comment at the bottom that said, "This is the worst film I've ever seen since Godzilla versus the Smog Monster."
Wait, who filled that out? Just one of the people in the audience?
One of the people in the audience, yes.
It was signed Steven Spielberg.
Oh.
that would be funny.
I know.
Now,
I'm sure at that point Fox said, "Yeah, of course we knew this was going to be a huge hit. We had no doubt in our minds."
Well, they didn't say that at that time. They just were pleased that the audience was mostly positive, and no one predicted until after the film was released into the marketplace for almost a month that it would do better than the original estimates. And because we had spent the better part of a year going around to science fiction conventions and talking about the picture, and I went to the World Science Fiction Convention in '76 in Kansas City and made a presentation with Charlie Lippincott about it, and Mark Hamill went too, and we just talked about the picture and had a slideshow. We had nothing else to show. We had no footage. We had no visual effects. We had some of Ralph McQuarrie's paintings and a mock-up of Darth Vader and the 2 robots. It was pretty pathetic, actually, by today's standards, but the audience was receptive, and these were hardcore science fiction people, and they all liked it. And the implication from the screening, that presentation, was that they would go see it, and that's what we expected. So when there were huge lines in the first week, we thought those were all science fiction people, and maybe they were, but those lines continued beyond the first month, and we said, well, these aren't all science fiction people, and the word of mouth is strong, and we're getting people a lot of repeat business. That is one of the key things that exhibitors like, and that helps a film break out into a general audience.
Wow. It's so funny to hear you talk about that presentation in 76 and then fast forward 40 years later to the
celebration.
celebration and the Last Jedi, and the big presentation and trailer. It's crazy.
Yes.
But I mean, it worked. What you did definitely worked.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like in our introduction, I said that you were a big inspiration to me in film school. I've worked on a number of films in my life, and I've never seen a producer go so far above and beyond what you did, going to the conventions. And on American Graffiti, I read that there was camera problems. You had taken the cameras apart, put them back together, because you knew so much about film, and you went really above and beyond. So, I just got to comment, and say thank you very much for being such a huge inspiration to me. And is that a normal thing for producers to go so far and really do a lot of the marketing and presentations?
Not as much as it should be, I suppose. I that it's really important that a good active creative producer is familiar with all aspects of filmmaking, including marketing and distribution. And I started out as a cameraman primarily, because I had been a stills photographer. When I was in high school, I was a film editor and did visual effects, and worked in a lab and effects house and did pyrotechnics, and I did a lot of films with Roy Corman in the early 60s in all capacities. And I think that experience was invaluable because I've recommended it to film students all along. Now, of course, with the technology that we have today, you can put together enough equipment to make a whole feature film for very little money if you're shooting digitally. I've seen 3 films now, 90-minute films that have on iPhone.
On iPhones?
And they look great.
Now let's take a quick break from our discussion with Star Wars producer Gary Kurtz to hear some more Star Wars memories from our Skywalkers.
Hi, I'm Chris Alexander, a Star Wars origami artist, and my favorite memory from 1977 was when my mom handed me the book Star Wars and said, "Here, I think you might like this, read it." So about a week later, I'm in the final battle. Luke and Wedge and Biggs are running down the trench. It's their second rundown, and Biggs gets killed. I was in the back of the car, laying on the back seat, reading the book on our way to Rhode Island, and I literally started crying. I was 13 years old. I literally started crying when Biggs got killed. Tears were welling up. I was like, "Ah!" And then about a week later, I saw the movie in May, and that was May of 1977. That was my most vivid memory of Star Wars. Happy 40th anniversary, Star Wars.
This is Bryn from A Window to the Magic, and my first Star Wars memory was Christmas 1978. We traveled from California to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for Christmas to stay with my grandparents, and it was super magical because it just wasn't California, and it was a different sort of experience to be there for Christmas. And my brother and I both got 12-inch Star Wars figures that year. I got the Princess Leia, he got the Darth Vader, and I remember opening them up in this little tiny row house in Pittsburgh. And it was so just different and exciting, and we got these Star Wars toys, and it was warm and crinkly and just Christmassy, and my first Star Wars memory is forever just wrapped up with being with family and feeling warm and excited. So happy 40th anniversary, Star Wars.
And now let's go back to our discussion with producer Gary Kurtz in his Star Wars podcast debut as a guest.
As far as we know. I've got to say, I've worked with many people who have worked on the original Star Wars when I worked in the film business, and they all just sang your praises about how great of a producer you were, and you were always on set, and you were always made sure everything was always taken care of. So I got to ask you, what do you think your biggest contribution in the making of Star Wars was?
Well, probably shielding George from as many of the problems as we could. I think that's one of the basic functions of any good producer, is that you should build a bubble around the director and let him work with the actors and take care of anything else that that becomes a problem, and solve those problems so that the film gets made. And no matter how small or how large the film is, that's I think one of the basic functions of a good producer. Unfortunately, now a lot of the people who are producers on films aren't that familiar with the filmmaking process, and so they may have good creative instincts, and they may have brought a script or an actor to a project, but they aren't well versed in the technology, which keeps changing all the time. So you have to keep up with what's going on. But I think it's important to know that as well, to be able to converse with the cameraman or the art director or the sound people or anybody else on their level with what they're doing, so that you get the best result in the end.
Do you recall a specific incident on Star Wars that you can, when you see the film, you can go, hey, I remember that day, and that wouldn't have happened had I not intervened or done this, or anything specific?
Not a whole lot. I think it was pretty general. There was, when we were working at Shepperton Studios to shoot the throne room scene for the end of the film, we had a limited number of extras, and the idea was to shoot plates and dress them up in different uniforms and move them around so that ILM could optically composite all. And Gil Taylor, who was the cameraman, who was very good and an old school kind of cameraman, he was not a visual effects person, and he was worried about that whole concept. So I ended up kind of controlling that. He did the lighting and I knew what ILM actually needed to piece the bits together. And so I probably did more on that scene than normally a producer would be involved with.
Oh, because you knew the effects better, like what was needed to make the effects work?
Yes, because I had worked in effects houses off and on for years, and I knew how optical effects work and what we needed for the optical printing, compositing of that material.
That's a big help.
Yeah. Was it hard working with Gilbert Taylor? Because I know you said that he was more of the older generation, and you and George were the younger generation. Was there a big language gap or just a theory gap between you two?
Not between Gil and myself so much, but George was used to working on small films and with a small crew, and so he was more used to a kind of semi-documentary or guerrilla filmmaking style, we used to call it as film students, and where everybody did everything. Well, with a bigger crew, you don't do that. And they had some clashes about the fact that Gil kept saying to him, talk to me a bit about what you want. What do you want to see? What's the result here? And I'll do it. Don't tell me where to put the lights, but just tell me what you want to see. And so that was part of the clash that they had. Eventually, it worked out fine. It was a personality conflict, I think, more than anything else, because Gil was a very, very competent cameraman, and the film looked very good. But it was just a different sense of style, that's all.
Yeah.
As the director of photography, was it his choice to make the Tunisian Tatooine scenes look a little bit more muddy and the Death Star look so polished? Well, partially. He was using filters and things, but we didn't have wonderful weather in Tunisia, so he used some filters to tone down the fact that it was overcast several days. We only had 2 weeks there, and we had rain in March, which hadn't happened there for 30 years, according to what the locals said. So we had to work around that and change locations a couple of times. So we didn't have a great time, but we got finished on time, and we just shot it a little bit differently than we had originally intended. But the sun was not out all the time, and so we had to Gil had to work hard to get the material to match.
Okay.
Which is ironic since Tatooine has got 2 suns. Now you've got no suns.
Oh. Well, I have a question for you because I love the music of films. That's like my thing. And so did you yourself have any say or suggestion as to the composer for Star Wars?
Well, we created a list of composers that we like. Both George and I felt that the film should have a traditional score, theatrical and symphonic score. And Steven Spielberg introduced us to John Williams because he had done Jaws, of course, and other films, and was quite proficient with symphonic scores. And he had written classical music pieces, concertos and things in between that were performed by a lot of orchestras. So he had a great classical training, and we were discussing it. We said that the whole idea of the way film scores were made in the 1930s, the way the composers who were working then worked on film music with the operatic tradition of motifs for characters that were woven together. He liked that idea and had used it himself several times, and I think he probably was initially suggested that. Using Mozart's operas as an example. And so we hit it off really well, and he and George got along very well. And he played certain of the pieces on the piano for us when he was working on it. But unlike today, where you can take a theme and just play it on a synthesizer and create a kind of mini orchestra thing as a temp music, and you see this is what it would probably sound like when we finally do the recording. We didn't have that ability, so we just had to listen to the themes and say, this is the princess's theme, or this is the main theme, and we just had to wait until we had the orchestra recording to hear what it really sounded like.
What did you feel about the music when you finally heard it?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was really great. And I thought he had done just an absolutely wonderful job of creating the atmosphere that we were looking for and help drive the story.
Yeah, definitely. Right.
Well, I'm sure when you heard those opening notes of the main theme, all your fears were like put to rest. Okay,
Dissipated.
now I can see how this is all going to tie together, and this is really going to work. You know, I've seen a lot of behind-the-scenes footage of John Williams, and just even on the set. Did you take a lot of that footage? Was that something that was normally done back then?
There wasn't much. Actually, what you probably have seen is part of a BBC doc that was made while we were doing the recording sessions and the preparation for The Empire Strikes Back. It was a film, I think it was an hour and 10-minute film that was released in 1980. And they had never filmed recording musicians before. So it was a unique thing. And it captured the flavor of that very well. But we didn't do it with Star Wars because we didn't have time. And we had a very tight schedule, very few recording sessions, and we just kind of had to sort of race through it. But on Empire, they wanted to do a film like that, and we had the time to do it, and it helped promote the movie as well. But it took a little negotiating to be able to get all of that together for the documentary. But clips from that documentary have been floating around in a lot of Star Wars-related material ever since.
You know, every time I see a picture of you on the set of Star Wars or The Empire Strikes Back, you're always holding a camera. Do you have a collection of photos that's never been released before?
I have quite a few. Yes, I shot hundreds of pictures all during the shooting. There was a huge batch of them, about 1,000, that were part of the press kit of the film, along with the unit photographer's photos. But the unit photographer was only around during the main unit shoot, and I had a lot of pre-production material and post-production material and second unit material. So together they made the whole package. But I always, on everything I've ever worked on, I've always
taken a lot of still photographs, and usually several thousand for every film.
Wow. What is your favorite thing about producing in general? Like if you had to pick one thing.
It's really hard to do. I think being able to do everything to a certain extent is great, and so every film I've ever made, I've directed bits and pieces of the action unit, the second unit. I've always enjoyed doing that, and also photographed material too sometimes, and it's just fun to be able to contribute little bits from everywhere.
Oh,
is there a story that you've never shared before about the making of Star Wars, something that you've always held back on that you'd want to tell us now?
I don't think so, actually. I think it's where almost all the stories have surfaced all through the time. There's no secrets really. It was quite a very straightforward production, and we didn't even have a blooper reel like most films, where they just put together the outtakes where the people make mistakes and funny parts. We didn't have much of that. We hardly had any of that at all, and we didn't actually cut one of those together because there wasn't enough material to show. So I know a lot of other films have, and even American Graffiti had a pretty good little blooper reel, but Star Wars didn't. We were on a really tight schedule. We didn't have enough time really to play around much.
I know this question was asked at the very first Star Wars convention I call Celebration Zero, to celebrate the 10th anniversary, and someone asked about a blooper reel, and George said, we just left all the bloopers in the film itself.
Well, that's true. There were some mistakes and ad-libs and things that, especially with Mark and Harrison, and that weren't really bloopers. They were just asides that worked really well.
Between the stormtrooper hitting his head on the door, or some of the visual effects just not being exactly right at the tail or the head of the shot, but yet were left in. However, at that point, we didn't really know the difference, and George has even made a reference to the stormtrooper hitting his head in Attack of the Clones by having Jango Fett hit his head on the Slave One ship, as if to say, you know what, it's an imperfect universe. Things happen.
Yeah. What do you think of current Star Wars films now, especially Rogue One, that kind of dovetails right into Star Wars? Do you feel that it achieved that tone of matching the look and feel of the original Star Wars?
I think it did a very good job of it. Yes, I know they studied the original film at great length and tried to make their drama and the way it was made fit as much as possible. But of course, it is 40 years later, and there are certain things about any film that are indefinite or difficult to put your finger on. But I think every film is a product of the time in which it's made. Mm-hmm. You can tell, and there have been cases of stories being remade, the same kind of story. So you could do the Three Musketeers. That's a good one. It's been done 6 times or 7 times, and it's about the same period in French history, and with the same kind of costumes and horses and everything, with virtually the same story. And yet each one, whether it was made in the 40s, in the 20s, in the 60s, or now the recent one just about 10 years ago, they all look like the product of the time in which they're made. You can't ever get away from that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And, there's movies like The Shop Around the Corner, which I believe came out, in the 1940s?
Right.
And then that was redone in the 90s. Yes. And then now today it would look even more different.
Yes, it would. And so I think that as far as it went, Rogue One was able to create a very good feeling for that time period, and I thought it dovetailed pretty well into the beginning of Star Wars.
Yeah, I'm so glad that the filmmakers of today, whether it be Gareth Edwards or even Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni, wanting to match that look of Star Wars, whether it's in Rogue One or even in the Star Wars Rebels TV series, they will use the same depth of field, the same lenses when shooting some scenes just to match that original look to make it be one cohesive universe.
Yes.
Did you get a chance to see the trailer for Star Wars The Last Jedi?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I've been traveling a lot, so I've heard a bit about it, but I haven't seen it yet, so I can't really comment on it.
Okay.
Well, were you looking forward to the current slate of Star Wars films, such as The Force Awakens?
Yes, I thought that once The Force Awakens took the plunge of introducing a new audience to the Star Wars lexicon, and I know that a lot of the fans complained that it was a bit too referential to the original Star Wars. I think that JJ and Disney knew that you had one, maybe two generations that had never seen the original films on the big screen and only seen them on DVDs or on television, that they needed to kind of reintroduce that whole feeling to a new audience. So I didn't mind the references. Maybe there were a few too many. For the most part, I think that that was a good decision, because now in 8 and 9 they can go off in a new direction with the story that the newer audience will now understand without necessarily having to reference those original films.
Yeah, there's already comparisons to how dark Episode 8 is going to be to the darkness of The Empire Strikes Back.
Gotcha. Well, now, Gary, can you talk about any projects that you are currently working on?
There's several, but we're developing 3 films that we're doing with Chinese co-production partners, and I'm traveling back and forth to China quite a bit. One is an animated film that's about orangutans in the jungles of Sumatra and about the destruction of the rainforest, which we feel is an important ecological subject. And part of the animation will be done here in London and part in China. And there are a couple of live-action projects about. One is an adventure story that's set in the 1920s in China about Western Europeans there, mixing with Chinese bandits of that era, and also one about a British missionary that was born, raised, and died in China in the 1930s and 40s during the Japanese occupation. So it's a mixture of a variety of kinds of stories. And also I'm working with a writer here on another stop motion animated project that is not China based at all. It's all being done here. It's a more fairy tale fantasy type story. So there are several, but none of them are really far enough along to really talk about yet. We have to get all the scripts finished and get into pre-production before we can announce anything.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you are very, very busy. Wow.
Yeah, it sounds like you're more busier now than ever before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? Do you have any advice that you would give anyone striving to become a film producer themselves?
Well, I think that probably the biggest thing is to learn as much as you can about all aspects of filmmaking, and now it's quite easy to do that without going to film school. There are a lot of smaller courses that are scattered around. I've taught in some of the schools here myself, and a lot of other people have as well. And just practicing with the equipment, so that you go out and shoot a 10-minute film in a weekend. I've judged several of the weekend challenges that have happened here, and some of the films are wonderful, really outstanding, and they've done a great job of shooting 5 to 10 minute piece in one day, and then editing it and putting sound effects and music in one day, and the results are amazing. To do a lot of that, because if you make 7 or 8 short films, it's like a portfolio of the kind of things you can do in a feature. And also now a lot of filmmakers are making what we call mood reels or sizzle reels, where they wanted to give you the idea of what their story is going to be like. And sometimes they will shoot half a dozen shots with actors and then use footage from other films, which we could never do because we never had the access to any of that. But now you can copy scenes off of DVDs. Now these are our little trailer reels that nobody's going to see commercially. So you can get away with doing pretty much whatever you want. But you can create a lot of atmospheric material with bits and pieces from television and other feature films, and be able to present a proposal on this is how my film will look or what I'd like it to look like. So I think making small films is the first thing, because it gives you an idea of how the process works and what works and what doesn't work. Because no film that you make at any length is going to turn out exactly as you wanted it. So it's you have to compromise on a lot of different areas, and so the great thing is that you can do that in making shorts and see how it works, because sometimes the results are much better than you anticipated, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're much worse than you anticipated. But you're going to get all kinds, and practicing on shorts is a great way to do it.
Being so active in the film business, what do you see as the biggest difference between producing a film 40 years ago to today?
In the independent film world, I think that the biggest challenge now for producers is the financing side, because most of the financing for smaller films comes from independent sources, and you have to spend a lot of time cultivating those sources and putting together kinds of agreements with multiple investment partners, which is much more difficult than just going to a studio and convincing them that you have a good idea. And if they say yes, then they just finance the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, which is why at the beginning of most films, you'll see like 16 production companies before the start of the film.
Exactly.
All right, before we wrap it up, I want to ask you, is there a certain question that you've never been asked in your years of doing interviews?
No. I've been asked everything.
Darn it. What did you have for breakfast? All right. Well, Mr. Kurtz, thank you very, very much for taking out the time and celebrating the 40th anniversary of Star Wars from the point of view of a man that was there since the very, very beginning, and we really appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad I could be on the show.
Hey guys, this is longtime and faithful Skywalker Joey Pittman, and I'm just talking about the first time I saw the original Star Wars. I was born the summer after it came out, so in 1978, so I didn't see it until the first time it was shown on HBO. Oh man, I still remember it. So we had Chinese food that night. You know, I was sitting right in front of the TV. And right from the very beginning, when Imperials are chasing the rebels at the very beginning, I mean, I was hooked. I was just completely engulfed in the story. You know, that's the scene that I remember the most. And along with the trench run, you know, everything else, you know, was awesome. But those were the two parts that stood out. And ever since then, I've been a Star Wars fan. I've never grown out of it. I've never kind of lost the phase, you know, phased out of it, as some people would say, like in school. So I've always been a hardcore Star Wars fan because of that. And that started my love for movies in general. You know, George Lucas became an instant hero at a young age. And, you know, seeing all the behind the scenes stuff because of Star Wars and George Lucas, I've always wanted to get into movie making. And more recently, because of Star Wars and, you know, where the fandom is nowadays, I'm just real grateful for the Skywalker community and how, you know, I got friends that, you know, we consider each other family. And, you know, I live in California, and there's, you know, got friends in the East Coast and Australia and England and everywhere in between. So, and a lot of that is because of Star Wars and my love for it and our love for it. So, man, happy 40th anniversary to the greatest movie ever. And here's to the next 40 years of Star Wars.
Hey guys, Viceroy Craig here with liningup.net. Happy 40th birthday to Star Wars. It surrounds us and it binds the galaxy together, or at least binds us all together as part of the Star Wars family. My first memory of Star Wars is 1977, somewhere out in the San Fernando Valley, probably Reseda, Tarzana, somewhere in there. My grandpa took me. I was 3 years old, hadn't, a couple months before turning 4, so I was pretty small. But I remember the huge lines. Obviously, being part of liningup.net, something that's continued to this day. It's been ingrained in my psyche. But I remember the huge lines wrapped around. Of course, when you're 3, everything's huge. It might have just been 50 people, I don't know. But wrapping around the building, we got in, and what stands out most to me, even to this day, is the scene of Ponda Baba's arm getting cut off in the cantina by the lightsaber. I guess Lucas hadn't decided to cauterize wounds when that happened, so there was the bloody stump, and for 3 years old, that was a little memorable. So that definitely stands out. And that's pretty much my first Star Wars memory. All right, guys. Catch you later.
Shout-outs, Skywalker shout-outs. Which Skywalkers get props from here in Neverland? Who was tweeted out? Shout-out. Who was photoballed? Shout-out. Who was shared a post? Shout-out.
All right, Sarah, now let's give our Skywalkers the shout-outs they deserve.
Absolutely. Okay, so first shout-out will come from YouTube. Because once again, we are promoting our YouTube channel. It's very exciting.
This is our first YouTube shout-out, isn't it?
It is.
Woohoo!
So last week, we asked for more subscribers, and you guys listened. So we are happy to report that we have, as of now, 53 new subscribers to our YouTube channel in just 1 week. So we just want to give a big thank you to all of you Skywalkers who liked our videos, who promoted it on Twitter, who just went and subscribed. That's amazing.
That's awesome that we got 3 subscribers since the beginning of this recording. So next week, we want 54 new subscribers.
That's true, yeah. And I do want to clarify that, in lieu of Patreon, we don't have a Patreon at all. We are using our t-shirts and our YouTube channel as a way to cover the cost of our show. It does cost a little bit of money to, have a website, to host our media, and so that you guys can listen for free. So we really appreciate any listens or watches on our YouTube, or all of you who have bought our t-shirt designs. That's just so amazing. So thank you so much. Any view on a video helps us out. And a special thanks to Margaret Mays, who says she's going to put YouTube on a loop in her office during the week. So,
wow.
I know. Oh, I guess we should tell them where to subscribe. So you can just head to youtube.com/skywalkingthrough-neverland, and you'll find us. That's our YouTube channel. It's right there. All of our latest videos are there. And we've actually put it different playlists. So all the Skywalking Through Neverland episodes are on one playlist. The Talking Apes TV episodes are on another playlist. I can't speak because I'm so excited. And and we have our Disneyland construction update videos. So it's very organized right now because I've gone through and made sure that everything is easy to look at, easy to find. All right?
Yeah, and like you were saying earlier, we're going to be uploading so many videos in the future because now this is our new obsession. Uploading videos.
It is. So
All
it's
right.
cool. If you have any suggestions for things you'd like to see, we would love to hear that. So please tweet at us at SkywalkingPod.
Now, our good friend and longtime Skywalker and Skywalking Through Neverland Facebook group admin, Joey Pittman. Hey, Joey. He has a podcast of his own, and he had us as guests. The podcast name is the Disney Universe Podcast, and we were on to talk about the Star Wars 40th anniversary. Mm-hmm. So much fun to share those stories with Joey, and Joey's really good.
Oh, yeah.
He's really good. Yeah, I loved his interviewing style. It's very flowing and very free, and he's very comforting.
Yeah, we had a great time on his show, and so if you would like to find that, you can search the Disney Universe Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, and SoundCloud.
And a big congratulations to Joey, making the plunge into the world of podcasting.
Yes.
Love the show. Now, Brian Krieger, he sent us a Facebook message and said, love, 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 all in caps, your podcast. I love that.
Aw.
Love to spend my time listening to you guys. Keep up the good work.
Aw.
Well, thank you, Brian.
That was very lovely.
I love that.
Now, Hector Rios Jr. here on Facebook has some suggestions for YouTube. He says, funny cat videos / Yoda singing about seagulls / Skywalking through Neverland equals YouTube gold. Oh my goodness.
Now, Tangent, you've seen the Yoda Seagull video, haven't you?
I don't think I have.
Yeah, really?
Really?
I had heard about it, and then I think it was Gentle Giant who was making a bust of Yoda with a seagull on his head, and someone posted it in our Facebook group, and I asked, what is this? And I think it was Joey or Donald Wicks who sent us the link to the Yoda Seagull video.
Oh my gosh.
All right, if you haven't heard it, here's a short clip.
Everyone told me not to stroll on that beach. Said seagulls gonna come, broke me in the coconut, and they did. And they did. Had me going like,
Wow.
You know, it's a very catchy song. It's a very, very catchy song. At first, I went into it like, oh, bad lip reading. What is this going to be all about? But by the end, I looped it over, listened to it again. Hector Rios Jr. says, make her watch it. After we're done with this, we're going to watch that video.
Well, sure. I can watch it now. No?
Yeah,
Well, okay, we'll save it.
Okay.
All right.
Now we have another Facebook group comment from our good friend, Joe Compton.
Yeah. Now, we met him at Friends of the Magic weekend with Window to the Magic. Okay, so he posted in our group, just listening to episode 169. I just love Margaret Carey. I especially enjoyed her answers to the questions from the Dellinger kids about, is Tinkerbell real? And is Tinkerbell the same size as she is? I had the pleasure of spending some time in Miss Carey's presence during a Friends of the Magic several years ago. Aww. So thank you so much, Joe, for posting in our group. We love that, and we love your feedback. We love any feedback that you guys have. And if you would like to join our Facebook group and have not already, it's a great place to get to know other Skywalkers. So in order to do that, you just search Facebook for Skywalking Through Neverland Facebook group, and then request to join, and then you will get 2 questions that you will need to answer. So answer that wisely.
Yes.
We will be looking.
Now, Hector Rios Jr. says on Facebook that my kids have memorized the lyrics to the Yoda Seagull song. All right, Hector, your homework now, record them and send it in.
Oh.
Okay? The
There you
challenge
go.
is yours. And what you can do is have them watch the video on YouTube, but give them headphones. So that way they can, it's easier to sing along to something rather than try to memorize the lyrics. But whatever works for you, we want to hear your kids singing the Yoda Seagull song.
Awesome.
And I'm sure it's got an official title, but everyone just calls it the Yoda Seagull song.
Nice.
And now let's go over to Twitter, where the Chickafence just sent in something that, Chickafence, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yes.
Sweetie,
So,
what am I referring to?
well, on Twitter, Chickafent, @Chickafent, tweeted to @Pablo Hidalgo and us, and they said, even Lothcats want to be Hoojibs. Hashtag make Hoojibs canon. Hashtag Team Hoojib. Hashtag Star Wars. Hashtag Lothcats. And what they posted was a picture of their white Lothcat that they got from Star Wars Celebration London with the Hoojib ears on it. So
now for the new listeners, Hoojibs are the little white furry fun bunnies that were incorporated into the Marvel comics of the 80s, and they're just so cute that we're trying to get them into the Star Wars official canon. All right, so what we have to do, we can do this. All you gotta do is tweet hashtag make Hoojibs canon and send it off to Pablo Hidalgo, Leland Chi, Matt Martin,
on
George
Twitter.
Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy,
Yeah.
Everybody.
So, and Chickafent also posted another tweet that says, even Boba Bear believes in Hoojibs, with a picture of their Boba Fett bear from Build-A-Bear, and then the Hoojib ears on that. So
yeah, as Patty Hammond says on Facebook here, love the Hoojib hop at Star Wars Celebration Orlando, where like 30 of us hopped around the convention floor as hoojibs, because Amanda Bond had made these awesome hoojib ears to wear. It was kind of like a hoojib Easter crossover. So cute.
Yeah, so we want to thank Chikafan and all of you Skywalkers for posting these pictures and the hashtag #MakeHoojibsCanon. And also, we love it when you tweet at us with your Skywalker selfies every week. So if you want to stop what you're doing right now and take a selfie with your phone of whatever you're doing, and if you're at a, be at a stoplight before you do it while you're driving, and just take a hashtag Skywalker selfie. We love to see what you guys are doing.
But like always, make it safe and never open your toys. All right. Now, let's reveal this week's Skywalker of the Week.
Joe content, Joe content, yeah. Joe content.
Well, congratulations to Joe Conton.
Woohoo!
Who sent us in that awesome message about how he loves to hear Margaret Carey on Ask Tink or even on the Skywalking Through Neverland episodes itself. She's like listening to your grandmother just tell stories.
It is. It's lovely. And we do have to give a big shout out to Rob Dellinger, who composes these jingles every week. And if you want to be the Skywalker of the Week, all you have to do is share the show in some way, say something nice about the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
That'll do it right there.
Maybe make a comment on a YouTube video, something like that.
That'll shoot you right to the top.
Yeah, we're branching out here. All right, Skywalkers. And also, Rob Dellinger is
the John Williams of podcasting. Now, before we talk with Ric Peralta about lining up for The Last Jedi, let's hear from the White Brock family about their Star Wars memories. First up is 3-year-old Zachary White Brock, and then we're going to hear from his mom, Rebecca, and Zachary's sister, Jenna, then dad, Sean White Brock. But before we hear from Zachary, we do have to warn you, he does reveal a major spoiler. Roll the alert.
Attention Skywalkers. Spoilers ahead.
Warning. Warning.
Attention Skywalkers. Spoilers ahead.
Warning. Warning.
Spoilers ahead. Spoilers ahead.
My first memory of Star Wars was when Emery told me Darth Vader's father, Luke's father is Darth Vader.
How old were you?
3.
And that was your first memory of Star Wars?
Yes.
Hi, this is Rebecca Whitebrock and my daughter Jenna here to share our first memory of Star Wars. My first memory of Star Wars was when I was 9 years old and we had just gotten our first family VCR. And every Friday night, my dad would go to Blockbuster and rent a video. And one of the videos he rented was Star Wars, and that was the first time I watched it.
And I am Jenna, and the first time memory was when I was 5, and I went on the ride at Disney World of Star Wars, and the next time I went on it, I was Rebel Spy.
I grew up in a farm in Indiana, so one of the most exciting things to do every summer was go to the county fair. However, back in the summer of 1977, my parents gave us the option of either going to the county fair or going to see Star Wars. I enthusiastically chose Star Wars, and that is one decision I have never regretted.
We've covered the first days of Star Wars. Now let's go to The Last Jedi.
Preparations are being made as we speak to start lining up in December, which will be here before we all know it. So let's find out what's in store from liningup.net with our good friend and Skywalker, Ric Peralta.
Hey, Rick.
Hey, Richard. Hey, Sarah.
Hey there. So what better way to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Star Wars than to make plans to line up for Star Wars Episode 8?
Woohoo!
So what can you tell us? What's going on?
Well, we've officially set our length of line now. So, of course, as everyone knows, I'm sure that there's not a Skywalker out there that's not aware. December 15th is when it's opening. But, of course, our show will be on the 14th at the TCL Chinese Theater IMAX. You catch that, Richard?
Something about a Gromans and a man in there. I don't know what you said. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
That's quite all right. So we're actually set to do a 7-day line for this movie, stretching it out a little bit longer than we did for Rogue One, obviously, but not quite as long as we did for The Force Awakens.
Wait a minute, shouldn't it be 8 days for episode 8?
You do bring up a valid point, but honestly, what it came down to is we need to make sure that not only do we have the bodies to maintain a line, but we also have the organizers to maintain that line and make sure that we're running the logbook and everything else. And just in terms of our personal availability for this year, we didn't have a whole lot of choice. I had to come down to 7 days.
All right.
So we are set for a 7-day line. We'll be starting on December 7th. And we, as we did for Rogue One, we're going to do the meet and greet that Sunday before again. So on December 3rd, we'll be doing an introduction to the line experience and the kind of family reunion meetup of all the alumni that want to get together and meet the new kids.
Okay, so was the main reason for not doing, like, say, a 12-day line the fact that the organizers weren't able to all be there?
That's probably the primary reason. We had a really long, I wouldn't say heated, but very in-depth conversation about trying to decide the length. Well, and it's the reality is that we do have a relatively small team of organizers. We want to make sure that we always have at least one of us on site. Mm-hmm. Just to make sure for, communication with the theater, anything we have to worry about in terms of security. I mean, it is Hollywood Boulevard after all, and there are occasionally security concerns. And so, we want to make sure about that. And of course, now that we are going back to collecting hours and maintaining that logbook of tracking time, it was important to have somebody that's there that knows how that operates, that there is a person for people to check in with. And it was really hard for us to make sure that we could. It's the weekdays are really challenging, obviously, and making sure that we had the staff to maintain that longer than 7 days.
That makes sense.
Yeah, if you want to do like 2 or 3 days, I'm all for that. That cuts right into our busy work season.
Yeah, I know it's a rough time of year for you guys, but it's challenging for all of us, and that's why we're really thrilled that they'll be moving back to those May releases, and that hopefully will start to make our lives a little bit easier on the planning front here.
Yeah. There's much reason to celebrate. This will be the last December release, as far as we know.
Yeah, and hopefully that means we don't have to be layered up quite so heavily in those nighttime hours.
Right.
Yeah. Besides, May is the Star Wars month.
Exactly. Absolutely. I mean, it's like like we've had you've had your talks on the show, and certainly here even in our household. Yeah, it's just there's nonstop dates to memorialize this month. From the of course May the 4th, but also you've got the original opening day. You've got George's birthday. You've got the releases of all the prequels. This is the time of year. This is the season to remember.
Yeah, you got Frank Oz's birthday, Tia Sircar's birthday, Peter Mayhew's birthday.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. It really is. Like every day there's something new.
Wow.
Now, back with The Force Awakens, you did do the hour thing where people who have the most hours get the first tickets. And for Rogue One, it was the money that we had put in. Is that right? I'm already forgetting. It's been 5 months.
Yeah, so Rogue One basically operated very differently from every previous line that we've done. Rogue One was there was a donation requirement, and that was pretty much all we required from you. And then you had to be in line at some point physically, so that you had to be there for that raffle pull that we did every night at 9:00. So we are going to go back to the way we've done it before. I think we will probably continue to kind of separate the story films from the saga films in this kind of unique way. The lines will be a little shorter. We won't be worrying about hours for the story films. They'll just be a full-blown party and having fun, hanging out just for a couple days. And for the saga films, we'll go back to the old school way of doing it. Several days, if not weeks in line, hanging out, collecting hours, clocking in, clocking out. We're also going back to kind of the way we did things way back going to 99 and the way we did things before we were even officially lining up .net. The original concept when we go back to the Phantom Menace was that it was not a minimum donation. It was a minimum fundraising goal. So each person, we treated it like a walkathon, only it was a standathon. And so, yes, we have a donation that's required in order to get you that ticket, but you don't have to front that money yourself. You can get other people to sponsor your time in line, and spread awareness of what we're doing, spread awareness of what Starlight is all about and why we're doing this. And so that's where we're kind of changing our approach here again. And yes, there is still a donation that is required, but it is about fundraising. And so if you have difficulty raising that cash yourself, if it's a little tight on your budget, that's quite all right. Find some friends that can throw in a buck or two, tell them why you're doing it, and you'll hit that goal before you know it.
So will there be the fundraising component for even people who cannot go to the line? You can still donate to Starlight Children's Foundation wherever you may live.
Of course, absolutely. Just as we did for the last couple of films, we had that page at the Starlight website.
Mm-hmm.
They've kept that page up for us. I'll send you that link again. It's still active. We had that running all the way through Star Wars Celebration Orlando, which did tremendously for us there. Of course, the excitement that we have in our organization about Starlight Children's Foundation now actually being a Force for Change charity. It's been really momentous for us in our kind of long-term involvement with them. To think that we've been working with them now for 18 years, and it feel almost like it's kind of all led to this moment of them getting this Force for Change awareness. So we're going to be working with them forever, and we're happy about that. And so we're just trying to make this about. We want to spread the awareness of this charity. We want to raise money for that charity. So that's what it's about. And people can donate online. They can get people to sponsor their time in line. They can flat out pay their own way in line if they want. We don't care how we do it. We just want to get the funds and set a really momentous goal. I don't think you guys actually are aware of this, but for the Rogue One line, that was just a 2-day line event, and we actually raised about $4,200.
Wow.
And we can do a lot as a community. We already know that Star Wars fans, in general, this whole community, we are all about giving back, and this is just another arm of that.
Do you know how much LiningUp.net has raised for the Starlight Children's Foundation in its entirety?
That's actually something we haven't publicly really said specifically about Rogue One, in part because we wanted to get our grand total across our entire lifetime.
Right.
And there are some. It's challenging for us to get hard numbers for those early years because we know what we did at that time, but old databases, the fact that the first line was actually run by counting down, not by lining up, all these factors kind of kick into it. But we do know that across all of the films that we've lined up for at the Chinese Theater, we have raised close to $100,000. So, this is a big thing we've done, and we're very proud of it.
Oh, well, you should be. That's a lot of money there. Good for you. Good for LiningUp.net.
Now we just need Ellen to hear about this and have us on the show and give another donation check.
Dibs. If Ellen DeGeneres calls, we get to be there, Rick. We get to be there, okay?
All right. You just want some swag. I get it.
How much time does each person need to put in to the Last Jedi line?
Yeah, of course. So we are probably about 95% towards locking down that actual total, but it's more than likely going to be a 24-hour minimum over that 7 days.
Okay.
So you think about it, we will have one weekend included in that window. If you can manage to do an overnight, you basically hit it in a single day. If you can't move that overnight, well, then you do 3 hours a day or something like that, and you'll hit it before you know it. So it is relatively easy, but we want to make sure that people are actually working towards something.
Right.
And so we are still looking at having a goal of at least a full 24 hours.
Now, we've been recording for about 12 minutes. Does this count to our time in line?
Sorry, I don't have the logbook on me. So I will addendum this, put you a little asterisk up.
Okay.
Of course, that is for the person that is standing in line, and each person standing in line can purchase more than one ticket. So we are looking at probably, again, doing a 4-ticket max per person. And we are talking about some rather substantial new twists as we get closer. One of our organizers, she has a kind of a big role in general in kind of marketing in the entertainment industry. She's very busy leading into Comic-Con, so there's some stuff that's not being locked down quite yet. and probably sometime around early August, we'll be starting to lock some of the unique new things that we're hoping to do, both in terms of surprises during the line and maybe even in terms of the scale of what we're trying to do.
Wow. Nice.
I also do want to talk about something else that we're probably about 95% along the way to locking down 100%. I'm pretty much sure that this is happening. It's just a question of how many total days during the event will it be happening. As you guys are probably aware, you recall down at Celebration Orlando, I got a new tattoo. I got my R2-D2 tattoo finally, and the artist who did that work for me, his name is Mike Bianco. He is an officially licensed Lucasfilm tattoo artist. He was right there in the tattoo alley at Celebration, and I've been talking to him for close to 2 years, going back to before The Force Awakens. He's a big fan of what we do. He owns all of the documentaries that have been made about what we do, and so we've been talking to him, and the theater got really excited about this idea too. And so we're actually looking at having 1, 2, maybe 3 tattoo artists actually in line doing tattoos, Star Wars tattoos, while we're in line at the theater.
Wow.
Wow. And if any Skywalkers want to get a Skywalking through Neverland tattoo, we will give you a free button. You're just going to pay for the shipping, but the button is yours for free. And it's going to be across both your legs. Just saying.
Both the legs, okay.
Now, has the El Capitan Theater just across the street, have they approached you guys at all saying, hey, if you guys want to come on over here, we'll get you 2 more tattoo artists and an ear piercer?
Honestly, no, we have not had really any communication at all from them. After The Force Awakens, it really just kind of became established that we knew that this was our home. It kind of always was. I mean, we even lined up when the movie wasn't even playing there. We lined up at that. It seems kind of silly for us not to stay.
That's dedication. But
that is
seeing
funny.
how the El Capitan is owned by Disney, I'm so surprised they haven't come to you in the middle of the night going, hey, guys, we'll make it worth your while.
Well, it is owned by them, and they certainly did offer a lot of options to us when we first started all this stuff before The Force Awakens. Disney also has a really powerful relationship with IMAX in general, and pretty much every one of their movies is set to open in IMAX for the foreseeable future. And of course, with the Chinese theater being the IMAX theater right across the street, we know it's always going to be playing there. And again, the theater has such iconic history for both Star Wars and for liningup.net that it's hard for us to conceive of leaving at this stage. I mean, who knows where conversations might be when we get into the 4th or 5th trilogy that we're going to be eventually facing. But where we are right now, this is our home.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, you've even seen our new logo. I mean, the logo is the Chinese theater. It is our home.
That's true.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love your new logo.
Thank you.
So after we get out of The Last Jedi, we can get right back in line for the Han Solo movie, which is going to open in 5 more months.
I don't even want to think about that. It's slightly overwhelming that we're going to have 0 time to plan for that line. So we almost have to. We're going to be doing a little bit of cross planning, probably starting around September or so.
Wow.
And planning 2 different lines at once. Which is honestly a little terrifying at the moment because, it takes so much time and effort from us to pull off a single line. It's going to be really interesting to see how we pull that one off.
Well, you know what? Sarah and I will take the helm if Eliza tells us the secret. Who is the voice of Chopper? We'll make life easy for you, Rick.
Yeah.
Really easy. All right, just putting
it's
it
really
out there.
easy. Except if you've seen how hard it is. I mean,
I can't tell you.
Well, Dave Filoni couldn't have trusted anyone better. Now, if the Skywalkers want to reach out to liningup.net to find out more information, where do they go, and where do they go to find you, Rick?
Of course. So you can, of course, find me as Kilted Jedi Rick on Twitter and Instagram. That's with no K. I am just RIC. And, of course, our organization, we are liningup.net. You can find us on Facebook that way. We do have a closed alumni group that's only for people that have actually been in line. So once you've done time in line, you can join that group. Just put in a request. Myself or one of the other admins will get you in. We do also have a public page where we really post all the news and all the details and anything else we have. And then, of course, on Twitter, the same. And on Instagram, we are lining up _net. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it the way we like it. But there we are.
Well, in this episode, we really have covered 40 years of fandom from Star Wars to The Last Jedi. The circle is now complete. All right, well, thank you very much, Rick, and we will see you in line, but probably much sooner than that.
Probably. It's great to talk to you.
So we hope to see all you Skywalkers in December for The Last Jedi. Now, let's roll into some more Star Wars memories from the Skywalkers.
Hey kids, Red 5 Mom here. When Richard and Sarah wanted people to share their Star Wars memories, specifically from seeing the 1977 Star Wars movie, I was excited. They were also asking for some memories from fans who were there at the beginning. And I'm one of those vintage, old, original fans. My brain is often leaky now, but I do remember this time very well. The summer of 1977, I was 16. My grandfather and grandmother both were, I guess they were kind of geeks themselves. My grandfather had a PhD in chemistry, and my grandmother had a PhD in music, and they were the ones that took me and my siblings to the movies often. But I remember him coming to our house and talking about this movie he heard about, and that it was like a Buck Rogers kind of movie that he used to watch when he was younger, and he wanted to take us all to see it. So that's what he did. The whole family, my mom, my dad, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, we all went to this movie for the first time. I could not believe what I was seeing. I was transported into another world. The soundtrack was moving and magical. The buildup of the violins, when the escape pod is leaving the Tantive 4 with C-3PO and R2-D2, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. The hologram of Princess Leia asking Obi-Wan for help. I was instantly invested in the lives of these characters. I was in a galaxy far, far away. And it was a dream come true, and I didn't want it to end. My favorite moment from the Star Wars movie is when Luke Skywalker is looking at the setting suns of Tatooine. And the John Williams score, the Twin Suns theme is swelling. And I'm falling in love with Luke and with this movie. And after that, I was determined that I was going to marry Luke Skywalker. I remember thinking to myself, it's not over. When we left that theater, we were all talking about how when Vader's fighter spins off into space, we were all saying, sequel, there's gonna be another one. If the villain's not dead, there's gotta be another one. I don't know how many times I saw that movie. It played forever that summer. I think there were some midnight showings for a while too, but I know my little brother saw it more times than I did. He had taken a cassette recorder, one of those brick-sized cassette recorders, probably bigger than a brick, into the movie theater, and boy, these days you can't do anything like that. He recorded on cassette tapes the entire Star Wars movie, and then we would sit at home and lie down on the carpet and relive the movie just through the audio sound. It was just magical. And I remember the first Star Wars thing I ever bought was I saved my babysitting money so I could have the soundtrack, because it was John Williams' soundtrack to Star Wars that awakened in me a love for movie soundtrack music. And to this day, if I don't like the soundtrack, I don't like the movie. So these are my memories from seeing Star Wars in 1977. It was a magical time. Happy 40th birthday, Star Wars. This is Red 5 Mom saying goodbye. Remember, drink your blue milk and always wear your helmet in your X-Wing. Oh, and one more thing. Never land on Alderaan.
Hi, Sarah and Richard. This is Jeff from Pennsylvania, also known as Jedi Fish on Twitter. I have two specific Star Wars memories from 1977. The first is I was 8 years old when Star Wars came out in theaters. My family and I were on vacation in Nags Head, North Carolina, And I remember specifically telling my parents that I wanted to see this new space movie that was out. And it was out for a couple months. It was like late June, early July when we were on vacation. And I do remember my dad taking me and my older brother to see this movie on our vacation. Now, of course, you know, parents don't like to go to movies while they're on vacation. They want to do other stuff, but I'm sorry, I needed to see Star Wars, so they actually took me to see Star Wars, and ever since, I was hooked. That Christmas, I wanted nothing but Star Wars toys, and unfortunately, I had to wait till they came in the mail, the early bird special. But the very next Christmas, there was nothing but Star Wars toys underneath the tree for me. There was the X-Wing, there was a TIE Fighter, there was a Millennium Falcon. Eventually I got the Death Star, the AT-AT. It was just Star Wars paradise for me as a kid. Happy 40th anniversary, Star Wars. You've brought nothing but joy to my life, and that I thank you for. May the Force be with you, and remember, never land on Alderaan.
Hi, Skywalking Through Neverland. This is Missy Davis. I am telling you about my earliest but best memories of Star Wars. So I wasn't around when the first one came out. I was born about 20 years later, so I didn't really have that much of a background, but I always liked Episode 1. I mean, the backstory for Anakin, because it always showed me that even though people have hardships, we can also celebrate them too. And I really liked how earnest he was when he was so excited to become a Jedi. Yeah, that's my favorite memory. You guys should always remember, never land on Alderaan.
Hi, this is Patrick Pine, and we are Skywalking Through Neverland. So, my Star Wars memory that I'll share is the first time I saw Star Wars, which was on opening day, May 25th, 1977, at the UA Cinema in Seattle. I was completely blown away by the sounds, the music, the overall scope of the film, the creatures that were in the film, especially like Chewbacca. I was just completely enthralled, and so much so that by the end credits, I actually wrote down the credit of sound design, sound effects, Ben Burtt. I'd never even heard the term sound design before, but I was so captured by the sound of the film, more than even just the music, the sound, that I took note of it. And it essentially was kind of the seed that led me on a path. I mean, at 11 was the same year I started playing the guitar, same year I started doing martial arts. I mean, 11 was an influential year for me, and I began pursuing music and recording. I was very interested in recording. By my early 20s, I had a band. We ended up in the recording studio, and which led me to pursue recording so that I knew my way around the studio. And now, many, many years later, 2 audio engineering degrees later, with literally thousands of hours spent recording both mine and other people's music, behind me, I can safely say that Ben Burtt and Star Wars as a whole has been a considerable inspiration and influence on me, as have the music of John Williams and George himself as a maverick filmmaker separate from the Hollywood system, and, you know, seeing out his vision despite people saying that he's just not going to make it happen. So to me, Star Wars is much more than just a brand or t-shirts or posters or merchandise or books or TV shows or even the movies. It's a place we all collectively know that's a fictional place. It's real in its unreality. And it's every fan. It's us. It's the child within each of us. And So, of course, I absolutely love Star Wars. So happy anniversary, Star Wars. And may the Force be with you, even before the dark times.
Before the Empire.
What's up, Skywalking Through Neverland? This is Steve. Along with me is my brother from another mother.
My brother from another mother. This is Arish.
And we just wanted to say, hey, happy 40th anniversary to you guys. Right? That they're celebrating Richard and Sarah, 40 years together?
No.
Oh.
No, Steve. We're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Star Wars.
Well, I thought it was really cool that they were married the same year Star Wars came out.
I think they're about 40, so they would have been married at like 5.
Oh, okay. Well, look, I'm not saying I'm the smartest man on this show.
Happy 40th anniversary, Star Wars.
Indeed.
I saw the movie in summer of 1977. I was 7 years old. It's the first movie that I remember seeing in the theater. I'll never forget being freaked out by Vader stepping onto the Tantive 4. I had no idea what I was looking at. Just so like, oh. But it's been with me my whole life, and I'm so blessed that it's part of my life today, both as a fan and as what I get paid to do. So,
yeah. And how about nice pronunciation of the Tantive 4 there? I appreciate. I like the way you combine Tantive and Tantive to make it your own thing, and I like it. I think I'm going to start saying Tantive 4.
Was that not the official pronunciation?
Well, I've heard people say Tantive 4. Well, that makes no sense.
Tantive?
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I said. Tantive, and then Tantive. Some people just say Tantive 4. My point is the sundered heart, if you will.
That's a little flavor.
Star Wars has always been a part of my life. It's the foundation of my geekdom, and it is the thing that makes me happy on when I'm feeling sad. There are days when it's like I have nothing that I can think of. In fact, someone reminded me of a story the other day where things are just going bad. It was a day where we were off with a bunch of people and things weren't going right, and I'm like, everyone just excuse me, I have to do this. And I popped in a Star Wars soundtrack and just hit the main theme, and that was the pick-me-up I needed to kind of get up and go, because Star Wars, it's this thing that's just in me. It's part of me, and absolutely love it and always will. Hope to never stop loving it, and looking forward to 40 more years with Star Wars, as I know Richard and Sarah are looking forward to 40 more years together. So happy 40th, Skywalking Through Neverland.
Happy 40th anniversary, Star Wars.
Now, Sarah, before we wrap up, let's remind everyone about the Buried Treasure Contest, where you could win a grab bag full of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 goodies. And all you have to do, very, very simple, all you have to do is be the 200th person to leave an iTunes review.
We're at 199 right now, so you could be it.
All you have to do is go to iTunes. All you have to do is go to iTunes. And all you have to do is go to iTunes and leave a review. A 1-star, a 5-star, a 3-star, a 4-star.
But you have to write something. You have to do a written review in order for it to count.
So head on over there to iTunes and leave your review.
Also, before we wrap up this episode, I want to say where we will be and where you can hopefully meet up with us. So on September 1st, 2017, John Williams will be at the Hollywood Bowl. Well, what Skywalker can pass up this experience? So Skywalkers, we are going to be attending on that Friday, September 1st, because John Williams is playing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but we are choosing that Friday. And we would love to meet up with you Skywalkers before the concert. We've actually reserved Picnic Area 14, which is called the Highland Camrose Picnic Area, for a meetup from 5:30 to 7 p.m. before the concert starts at 8. So if you happen to be attending to the bowl that night, or even if you're not, you can still join us for the picnic beforehand. So bring your picnic dinner there, you can bring wine, you can bring drinks, and you can chill out with some like-minded Skywalkers before the concert.
You know, anyone who had gone to Celebration Orlando is going to be so rowdy, just so John Williams will turn around and tell us all to hush.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
That's going to be the new big thing.
And make sure you bring your lightsabers if you are going to that concert.
Yes.
He loves that. John Williams last year said he loves that.
Yeah, because no one else does it. No one else waves their lightsabers during all the Star Wars scores.
It's so amazing. All right. On September 17th through 22nd, 2017, we are going on a 5-night skywalking Disney cruise to Baja, Mexico on the Disney Wonder. It's the Halloween on the High Seas cruise. Now, September 16th, which is the night before that cruise sails, we will be in San Diego that evening, and we will be doing a meetup that evening, probably at like a tiki bar for any of like the San Diego Skywalkers who happen to be around.
Brian Sims was just talking about a tiki bar down there.
Yeah. So we want to have drinks with you guys. So we're going to do like an informal meetup on September 16th, 2017 in San Diego.
But before you enter the tiki bar, you have to sing, "In the tiki, 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 tiki room."
Tiki Cantina, in the Tiki Cantina. Yes. Awesome. Now, I think there's still a few more slots on that cruise if you want to join us for the cruise, which we are really getting set for. We've scheduled some events on that cruise. It's very exciting. So to get more info, email our friend, podcaster, and cruise buddy, Randy Crane at cruise@storiesofthemagic.com and get a free, no obligation quote. So just let him know that you're part of Skywalking Through Neverland so he knows you want to be part of our group.
All right. And then a few months later, in December, probably a day or two after Christmas, we're going to have a Skywalker meetup in Framingham, Massachusetts to see The Last Jedi.
Yay!
Now, this is where we can find the big Jordan's Furniture movie theater.
Okay.
Don't worry, when you get there, it'll all make sense. To see The Last Jedi, this is an awesome 4D theater. Now, it was 4D when I saw Attack of the Clones there back in 2002. So I'm guessing they've upped the stakes.
Okay.
And they didn't take away the 4D, but this was a fantastic IMAX theater.
Oh, fun.
Loved it.
So we're going to see Star Wars?
Yes. And if we're lucky, they'll still have their introduction where they introduce the new Star Wars movie and their funniest Boston accents. Oh my goodness. I will laugh until the end.
So that'll be the week between Christmas and New Year's. We're not sure what date yet, but as we get closer, we will let you guys know.
Yeah. I think
so we're going to be all over the country, Richard.
Yes, we are.
San Diego, LA, and Boston.
I think we have just as many Skywalker family members in Massachusetts as we do in Florida.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
with Los Angeles being a distant third. Hey, Rebecca Whitebrock just joined. Hey, Rebecca, this is going to be a fun episode for you and your family.
Oh.
All right, now, sweetie, we got to wrap things up.
Okay.
I don't want to wrap things up. I'm having a great time on this episode 170.
I know. Oh, my goodness. We would like to thank Gary Kurtz and Craig Miller for helping us with that discussion.
And we also want to thank Ric Peralta and all the Skywalkers who sent in their Star Wars memory audio clips. Thank you very much.
We'd also like to thank all of you for listening every week and sharing the show with friends or family. We love that.
And watching on YouTube, on Facebook, all the face huggers, all the scope walkers on Periscope. Thank you all for tuning in every week.
Now, we are part of RetroZap.com, where you can find some awesome podcasts like Brews and Blasters.
And the Deucecast movie show.
The Sandcrawler podcast, a collecting show.
Beltway Banthas.
Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels.
And Techno Retro Dads, as well as Talking Apes TV, which the new episode should be coming out in about less than 2 weeks. And that's where my co-host and I, Marco Gushewitz, we talk about everything Planet of the Apes regarding television.
Awesome.
They had 2 series in the 70s, and we break down every single episode of both the live action and the animated series.
Now you can also find Skywalking Through Neverland and some of our articles at jedinews.co.uk. All right, social media. If you want this conversation to continue throughout the week, we are at Skywalking Pod for Twitter, Instagram, Periscope, and sometimes Snapchat, but not all the time.
Like almost never.
I know.
All right, and we love to read your iTunes reviews. be the 200th iTunes reviewer and receive a Guardians of the Galaxy 2 goodie buried treasure grab bag.
Woohoo!
All right, now with that, stay tuned for bits of the show that didn't make it into the actual show itself, some bloopers, some outtakes, and always remember to celebrate the Star Wars 40th anniversary this week with us. And
Neverland on Alderaan. Some imagination, huh?
To our Skywalkers and Tweetwalkers, thanks for listening. Skywalking Through Neverland is created and produced by Richard and Sarah Woloski. Original music by Rob Dellinger. Creative consultant Mark Augushowitz. Technical advisor Peter Heitman. Facebook administrators Donald Wicks, Joey Pittman, and Norma Heitman.
Skywalking Through Neverland is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Any sounds, music, and clips played during this podcast are the property of their copyright holders. All original content is property of Skywalking Through Neverland, all rights reserved. Sorry, had to be said.
All right, Skywalkers, and also Rob Dellinger is...
This guy...
Oh, what the heck was that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is the Skywalker of the week. That's totally wrong. One more time. Darn bullies.
Absolutely.
Next time we go back to Newton, I'm going to find their TIE fighter, and I'm going to wreck it. I'm going to wreck it. I'm going to bring Ralph, and I'm going to wreck it.
Okay. Ahsoka everything.
All right, I'm going to keep on saying this, because I know it's going to be true.
Uh-huh.
Pixar's first crossover film will be the Ahsoka movie.
That would be so... We keep on getting notifications on our phone. Okay. All right, guys.
All right, here's some a break.
Do you want me to say this?
Sure.
Now,
let's take a...
Now... All right. Richard, can you talk?
Yes, I can talk.
Levels yet?
Yes, I can talk. Believe
Okay.
me, it's talking is no problem. It's being quiet. That's the problem.
Yeah,
That's
I
where
know.
the real issues.
I know.
Yeah. What do you mean you know?
This is going on the end, isn't it?
If it's being recorded, it will fit in the show somewhere.
Oh, it's recorded.
All right, then it'll fit the show somewhere.
Okay.
QBBA.
And it'll be on the show and mint in box.
There, see, that's what I'm talking about. Always been in box.
No, because I have
Except in the
Ahsoka
Peralta
here.
household.
You two
See, I'm
don't know the
holding-
value of a toy. They're not to be played with.
Well, we don't play with them either, but we unwrap them and put them on a shelf.
See?
Right, but they look so much better in their packaging because then you get to show off the packaging as well.
But then they're stuck, and then they become bad
They
guys.
like it in there. It's nice and
And
comfortable.
then you
it's air
can't
conditioned.
you can't layer stuff really well. I can have a whole shelf full of just droids, and they fit.
Right, but then when
I've
you
got like
get too
40
much-
R2s on a shelf.
When you get too much stuff on one shelf, then it just looks cluttered and there's no focal point. You put a couple of different pieces
Yeah,
on
the
a
focal
shelf,
point is
then
a
you know.
whole collection of droids.
Yeah, then it's like one big clump of astromech.
Okay, let me just say that again.
Sure.
This is Gary Kurtz, the producer of Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back. I'm celebrating the 40th anniversary of the original Star Wars on Skywalking Through Neverland.
Perfect.
Nice.
Oh,
Love it.
better than Harrison Ford could have done. Well, all right,
Okay.
Mr. Kurtz. Well, I wanted to thank you very much.
Yes.
This has been a 40-year dream talking to you, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
All right, thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
take care now.
You have a great
All
day.
right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, phew. Oh.
All right.